Hey guys, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I hope you enjoyed this interview. All right, welcome back to the program. My guest is joining me right now is Dr. Ogho Okiti. He's the Chief Executive Officer at ThinkBusiness Africa. Dr. Okiti, good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Yeah, so let's get
here.
Yeah, good to have you. Let's get started. The president's speech. What are your sentiments?
I mean, I think the president actually addressed all the issues in the sense that he spoke about what they're doing regarding security. He spoke about what they're doing on the economy side. He spoke about the recent flooding in Borno and the efforts that the government is making. He acknowledged the cost of living crisis that we are going through and what the government is doing about that. He mentioned and spoke about the different support that they are providing to the different categories and different categories of Nigerians, whether it's business, whether it's youth. So he spoke about there's a forthcoming youth conference coming up. So yes, on January, I think he touched on all the points, and yes, I think that's a good yes.
So touching on all the points, does it equate to that he sufficiently addressed what Nigerians actually wanted or what Nigerians want for his 64th year anniversary, as it were? For me, in fact, when I listened to him live, at the beginning, the way he started the speech for me was fantastic. In terms of
because he went straight.
Yes, I acknowledge the difficulties you guys are facing. That is one. But the other thing is, Nigerians are suffering. We're suffering.
Yes, that is why I said he touched on all the points. So you are talking about the speech. So I'm responding to the speech. So the speech is not going to. It's not going to deliver
the speech is not the deliverables.
No, it's not the deliverables. I mean, the speech is the speech. So in a speech, you can acknowledge, you can empathize, which he did, and that's the best thing that you can do in a speech. Yes.
Okay, so now let's take a look at the content of the speech, because that's what I actually mentioned earlier, that the way he started, acknowledgement, sympathy, empathize with you, which was good, but now is the cocoa of the matter. What if you take a look at the economic side of what he said? We've seen, I think, let's just start with the elephant in the room, the ways and the means question. What do you think about that? Because you're an economist. I've been in this game too for a very long time. And we know what happened, of course, during President Buhari's days. President Buhari happens to be the president that Nigeria has been most indebted president, as it were, and all of that. And you're hearing a new president, President Tinubu, who is like 17 months on the saddle or so, coming to say we have cleared. I actually started asking myself, what's the meaning of clear?
I don't understand what they mean by cleared. I mean, I don't understand, because what they did with the ways and means it's got nothing to do with clearing. Because if we're talking of debt and you use the word clear, my own understanding would be it has been paid. But obviously, they have not paid any 33 trillion, whatever it is that the ways and means was. They have not paid it. So I don't know whether he was, maybe the speech was written by one of the speechwriters that did not understand what it means to use that word cleared. Because obviously they did not clear. All they did was securitize the ways and means over so many years, I think about 40 years. And so, it was wrong and incorrect to use the word cleared the ways and means, yes. But I don't want to judge the speech on the basis of whether they deliberately lied or it was just that they did not understand the language to use in that context.
Because when Nigerians are actually confused in terms of, okay, that's a speech that, in terms of that, was inaccurate. Yes. Because whatever a president says is policy. Whatever a president says, you should be able to take that to the bank.
Yes.
Do you understand? Because I was actually also thinking when he mentioned that, what will foreign investors be saying when they read that? Though they're coming out, I think one of the eight came out to say, okay, Claire, and now say, okay, no, CBN should come and explain. What will CBN come and explain for something you have securitized?
Yes.
already.
Yes, and in fact, that was not even the only one. I mean, there's also the mention of attracting 30 billion US dollars in the last year. So, when you say you attract 30 billion US dollars, that's not the size of foreign direct investment that you attract that people will not know about. One, it does not reflect in the FDI numbers. Two, it does not reflect in the results. Three, it does not reflect on the businesses on the ground. Four, it does not reflect on the exchange rate. So when you use those kind of language, we have attracted 30 billion US dollars in the last year. So it becomes like, I'm going back to the same thing. Is it a deliberate joke or is just a misuse of language? You can say we have prospects of 30 billion US dollars in the last 1 year.
Or something.
But you can't say you have attracted, because attracted means that you have actually,
they're
those investments are on ground in Nigeria, and that's not the case.
You know, okay. It gives a lot to chew on in terms of this foreign direct investment attraction, as it were, and the ways and means clearance according to the presidency, or according to the president, of 30 trillion or naira or whatever it is. In the import of that, would you say that this administration now has the, has a grasp of what it is doing economically? Because if the president of a nation is supposed to speak, and those policy decisions or those policy announcements that are supposed to be in his speech are not well articulated, what do you think?
Okay. I mean, I understand your question, but I think maybe this is a good point to go back a bit. And if we're assessing about, we're talking over 1 year in government, I mean, the president and, of course, and his team. So one, the context in which they came into power, I mean, there was severe macroeconomic instability. That was the major contest. And of course, there's also insecurity. So if we just stick to those two, there was severe macroeconomic instability and there was insecurity. So as a government, I think in the last 17, 18 months, I reckon they do not really understand how to solve a macroeconomic instability problem. Because when you talk about macroeconomic instability, you're talking about two important metrics. You're talking about, or you can say three. You can say, of course, you're talking about high inflation, you're talking about high debt, and you're talking about volatility of the exchange rate or weakness of the exchange rate, whichever way you look at it. So I think all the measures, especially the fiscal measures in the last 17 months, has not done anything to support those three things. That is where I have a problem with this government. So whether it's debt, they are just adding to debt. The debt that they're adding to debt, that is what is reflecting in the volatility and the continuous weakness in the exchange rate. That is why we have that. So if you are not doing fiscal consolidation, how are you going to stabilize the Nigerian economy? Without fiscal consolidation, I don't want anyone to mince my words here. Without fiscal consolidation, and I stand on it, without fiscal consolidation, we cannot have stability of the exchange rate. We cannot have stability of inflation.
What do you mean by, in this case now, what do you mean by fiscal consolidation?
Good. Thank you for that. So when we say fiscal consolidation, I said at the start of this administration that for me, the first thing that you have to do is the growth of the debt. Stabilize the growth or stabilize the debt. So he means that, okay, we have debt of, let's say, 100 million. We can probably, because of course it's very, very difficult for us to say, okay, we just shut down all expenses and all debt. You can probably grow that debt over by 1%, 2%, 3% at the most. But not the rate of growth of debt that we have seen in the last year. And of course, that debt is not only external debt, which actually supports the exchange rate, which is good if it's external. It's not only that. We are also seeing that they have increased the allowances of borrowing from the Central Bank of Nigeria from 5% to 10%. That's two. Then three, we also know that they have also done some ways and means. At least they announced the 7 trillion. So those are not measures of fiscal consolidation. So if you are not going to tighten your belt, because you think that government expenditure will deliver growth. Government expenditure does not deliver growth in a macroeconomic instability environment.
Unstable.
It doesn't. So any further expenditure, deepening further government expenditure, or this, that, is only worsening the macroeconomic instability situation. And we have an history to go back to. If you go back to the Obasanjo years, if you go back to go and look at the growth in the expenditure, especially from that 2002, 2003, go and look at the growth in government expenditure. It was very, very slow. And that was the reason you were able to stabilize, because every government expenditure, you just only look at the fact numbers. Every government expenditure just goes and add the pressure to the exchange rate. Whether it's through leakages, whether it's through wastage, whether it's through travel, whether it's through whatever it is, but whatever it is, all the resources from FAC put pressure on the exchange rate. So if the problem at the start is macroeconomic instability and the problem is insecurity, I am saying that all the measures that they have taken at the moment in the last 17 months does not strengthen and does not support the objective for which they have declared that they want to achieve.
Okay, Doctor, 2 questions arising from 2 follow-ups from what you've just said. Now, the government may disagree with you. I'm not their spokesperson.
Of course, they would disagree. I mean, no, I don't have a problem with that. That's the good thing about economics. I mean, we can all disagree. Yes.
Can disagree, you know. The government may disagree with you in terms of this debt thing, to say, okay, because of the devaluation of the naira, that's why we've seen our public debt balloon. So I'm taking the toga, I'm taking the hat of, like, the Minister of Finance, if you are debating with him now, and he gives you this. No, it's because the naira has been devalued. You know, a few times we've seen, okay, floated. That is why it will definitely impact the public debt. Public debt, I think, is at 121 trillion naira the last time I checked. And the last time DMO released that, that was for March of this year. We've not gotten till the April to June quarter. I suppose that when that comes out, it will be more than that. And just recently, too, the World Bank they've been going to the World Bank for additional loans, and that will definitely reflect on our debt profile. So, assuming I am Wale Edu, you said this at the debate, and I answered you, what would you tell the minister?
Okay, it's very, very straightforward.
Who happens also to watch the show, so he may actually catch you.
You floated the currency,
yes.
Right. So when you floated the currency, so let's look at the trajectory. When the currency was first of all floated, it was 750.
750, about that.
So, 750. When you float a currency, it's still about demand and supply. That's essential. That's the essential thing. It's about demand and supply. So we have been managing to attract supply, at least in the context of additional external borrowing. The question we asked, or the question I'm asking, is that where is the pressure on the exchange rate coming from? It's coming from the fiscal side. It's not coming from me. I don't have. Where's the resources? It's coming from the fiscal side. That's where the pressure is coming from. You have floated the currency. No problem with floating the currency. But since it's a demand and supply problem, then what is the data saying about the pressure on the demand? The pressure is coming from the fiscal side. And those pressure is coming from the fiscal side because the measures that are supposed to be taken on the fiscal side in terms of consolidation and prevent that pressure has not been taken. So let me also broaden this argument. There is this understanding sometimes in government that policy can just be isolated. And to be honest, that is my thinking when they actually did the removal of fuel subsidy. I think removal of subsidy, everybody wanted removal of subsidy.
Not everybody, no.
Well, I'm coming to that.
Yes.
So if you understand, at least you have known me for over 10 years.
Yes.
If there's anyone that has written consistently about the removal of subsidy. I am the one. I have ranted consistently about that. However, you cannot do a policy of that staggering magnitude in isolation. So let me try and understand. You removed subsidy. The resources, it was 185, right? The reason it was 185, it was because government was actually subsidizing, right?
At that time, that was 185 or 190 something. Yes.
So let's assume if government was not subsidizing, it would have been 600, right? It would have been 600. Now you removed it, Nigerians are now paying. When we paid that money, the question then is all the resources that went back, where did it go to?
That is the difference between 600 and 195. As it were, let's put it down. Over 400 and something.
So if you were not doing a policy in isolation, those resources should have actually gone back to paying back debt, because the government was incurring debt in paying those subsidies. So he said that you were going to pay back the debt, right? Pay back some of those debts, or start paying back some of those debts, or the language that was used before they remove the subsidy. We will have resources for education, we will have resources for health, we will have resources for this, for that. Now, I'm asking whoever is putting that argument to me, in the last 18 months or 17 months that we have, and all the fact has gone up, how much of that has gone back to debt? How much of that has gone to education? How much of that has gone to health? I don't think there's evidence that that is what has happened.
Yeah.
So that means that instead of the resources that are now coming from the pockets of Nigerians being used in the manner that does not put pressure on the exchange rate, that has not happened. I think the leakages, the wastage, and everything that was in government before then continued even on a higher scale and putting pressure on the exchange rate, and that is why we are where we are. And by the way, let me add another problem to that: inflation tax. Because resources Nigerian resources is like 100, right? So if government had 30, private sector had 70. If government now had 70, private sector had 30, right? Nigerians, because of the pressure on the exchange rate that has now seen exchange rate balloon to where we are now, we are now paying more for everything that we're paying less for. We don't have subsidy anymore. We are now paying more in terms of exchange rate. Meanwhile, all the resources have gone back to the government.
Doctor, this is such an interesting point that I would still like us to x-ray, because it's a good analogy that you actually gave us in terms of what we were paying before, and the government said that there was subsidy. We use the 600 to 195 analogy. But the vexing point of it is we pay perhaps 1,000 naira a litre. It depends on which part of the country you are. And there's still subsidy, we've been told, as it were, as if before we got here. Do you understand what I'm saying? A component of it is still paid by the NNPC Limited. The Dangote Furori and NNPC Limited coming into all of that. So, so how do you now put all that together?
We are still paying subsidy because what was supposed to have been done, when you are doing a policy of that magnitude, you must secure your exchange rate at that level as much as possible.
They told us they are still paying subsidy.
Yes, because we are importing fuel and our exchange rate is
and
very
Nigerians
volatile.
are paying higher than what we were paying before at 195.
Because of the exchange rate.
So,
because of the exchange rate. But that's why I keep hammering on the exchange rate volatility. What is driving the pressure on the exchange rate?
Now, let's come to that question, which is the exchange rate weakness that we've seen. Governor Cardoso, governor of the CBN, mentioned at the last MPC meeting, I underlined it in the communique, and I discussed it here, that they've realized that relationship between the release of FAC funds and the exchange rate volatility or depreciation or weakness at that point. What do you have to say about that? That is one. Then secondly, floating the currency, floating a naira that is not in a way tradable currency. We were in a conference together, a public lecture series. Was it 2 days ago?
2 days ago.
Yes. Professor Akpanikwe, renowned economics, in his lecture was like, how can you even say you are floating a currency that is not tradable? As it were, we are not the Chinese yuan, for example. We are not the dollar, for example, that if you say you float a currency to support the export potential of your citizens, what with the export? We no pass, as it were, crude oil and a few things. So what do you have to say about that?
So, I mean, the governor saying fag, I don't think the governor just realized that. I think he just felt that maybe now he had to mention it. I don't think the governor just realized that, because I realized this since last year. So if I realized this since last year, I don't think the governor is just he's just realizing that. The data bears it out. Fact, and that is actually a very good way of saying it, fact. I won't use the word fact.
Fact.
Governors. Fiscal policy is the pressure. That's where the pressure on the exchange rate is coming from. And every other problem that we have comes from the volatility of that exchange rate, including the subsidy element that we now still see. So what I am saying is, if you don't get a grip on the fiscal situation and ensure that we don't have that enormous pressure on the exchange rate and we have some sort of stability, every other form of objectives that we have will flow from there. But without us stabilizing the exchange rate and, of course, stabilizing inflation or bringing inflation down, then we're not going to make the progress that we seek to make.
So how do you think that this administration can come back from this? I'm not saying reverse its policy. If it wants to, that's its own prerogative. If it thinks it has failed. But how do you think that this administration can address these macro issues now? With high inflation, exchange rate weakness at a certain point in time in a month because of the excesses and the rascalism of the governors, because we need to say it as it is. There's no need of mincing words. The data is there. The governor of the central bank said that much, that when you guys come to take FAC allocations, we see that there is a correlation between that and Naira weakness. That means that they go to wherever they go to and exchange money. That's on one hand. The other aspect of it is that the reforms the president has also promised, as it were. How do you think that this government should get a hang of it? Can they come back from this? I don't want to call it misalignment, but the headwinds that we're seeing.
So you can reverse subsidy removal. So let's get that out of the way.
Did President Jonathan reverse it?
It's going to be worse. It's going to be worse if you
Did President Jonathan reverse it?
It's going to be worse now if you do that.
Tell me why.
Well, I don't think removal
anyway,
subsidy
when
is a
I'll
very
talk
good
about
policy.
that again.
It's a very good policy.
That
I'm not going to change my
I would
mind.
take.
The problem is, what have they done with the resources and the dynamics that followed? So you're supposed to do fiscal consolidation when you remove fiscal fuel subsidy, because the main problem of fuel subsidy was that he did not allow government enough resources, right? Now you are getting more resources, but those resources are going to the usual waste, leakages, and whatever, which we have seen the effect on the exchange rate. So that is the only link that the government needs to deal with. If the government is not serious about dealing with that link, for me, I don't see any progress from here. I don't. Because how would the progress come? I mean, we have gone from 750. We are now doing 1.6. 1.6 in the space of 17 months. That is ridiculous. And what that does is that it forces the Central Bank of Nigeria to be heavy-handed in terms of its own monetary policy. But there's only a limit to the power of monetary policy in circumstances like this, when fiscal policy is so loose, so wasteful, and so reckless.
So that means Cardoso's work is cut out for him. That means that, from what you're saying, monetary policy will not even solve the problem, which it has not even solved.
It can't solve the problem
in the past few years.
Because the source of the problem is not monetary policy. The source of the problem is fiscal.
So what does that tell you about fiscal and monetary policy coordination?
I don't see any harmony.
There's no harmony?
I don't think so. Because, I mean, I don't see it. Meaning that I'm not seeing the result. I'm sure there will be conversations going on. I'm sure there will be measures they are trying to work together. But if I have not seen the result, is the evidence that there is not enough conversation or enough agreement on measures on how to tackle this very, very important severe macroeconomic instability that we have.
This is President Tinubu's second Independence Day anniversary speech. Do you see any differences from 2023 speech and 2024? Because for me, after that Independence Day speech on Tuesday, I guess, I had to go back to read the 2023 speech, and I saw a few things that I did not see follow up in the 2024 speech, or perhaps follow up in the last 1 year in terms of governance. For example, in the 2023 speech, the president said, "Oh, we are supporting states with state infrastructure fund, or he called it something, state infrastructure support fund in 2023." And I'm asking myself in 2024, where's the infrastructure? The president categorically said it in 2023. Oh, it's a few reforms, CNG buses too were mentioned. Then I tried to count how many CNG buses we have now in 2024, vis-a-vis the urgency that Nigerians need that kind of transportation, because we've seen that transportation costs have also pushed core inflation, you know. So what's your assessment? I don't know if you also...
Okay, so I will actually try and go beyond the specific. Every Nigerian government, including the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, they have always suffered from what I call execution problem. Nigerian governments, they all have great ideas. But
including Obasanjo, including
Obasanjo, all of them.
Jonathan,
all of them. Even Buhari, they all had great ideas. However, in terms of execution, and that is why it showed, the one that has done the most, executed the most, followed up policy, thought through rigorously, thoroughly, is under President Obasanjo. The good thing under President Tinubu is that there is still time. There is still time. Yes.
How much time?
Well, there is still time. He's still president of only 17 months.
Yes.
There's still time. At least there's 2.5 years.
Taking our political calendar,
there's still time.
He has like next year or early 2026.
There is still time. If you start to seriously look at your execution now, for me, I think they can still do much more. Having said that, I don't want to just be critical. I think they have done some things well, and they can learn from what they have done well.
Like?
The most important thing they have done well, in my own opinion, is the Presidential Committee on Taxation and Fiscal. For me, that is I tell people everywhere. And if you go and look at the way they did it, look at the execution, look at the thoroughness, look at the rigorous way in which they have gone about it, then you will know that, yes, this is how you go about policy.
It's taking them about 1 year. I actually said, but that's also a long time. Yes, that's a long time. A time where you're daily committee to do that is a long time.
You see, I would rather we take 6 months and dissect the whole dimensions of a policy, so that when that policy comes, we know where we are going to, rather than do a knee-jerk policy announcement that 1 year after, as you have said, we don't know where we are about those policies.
So are you telling me that for serious-minded and competent people, it will take you 1 year? Do you do the same thing in
private sector? It does not necessarily take 1 year.
Do you do that in private sector?
I have not suggested that everything must take 1 year.
Yes.
It may take 3 months.
Atawoyedele is coming from the private sector.
It may take 1 year. It may take 6 months in some cases. It may take 3 months. However, the most important thing is that whenever the process is completed, we ask ourselves the question, is it thorough? Is it rigorous? And is it comprehensive? So the policies that we have seen so far, because when we talk of President Tinubu as a reformer, it's only 2 reforms that we have been talking about for 17 months. It's only 2 reforms.
Would you even removal of subsidy.
Exactly.
They are not reforms to me.
So
they are just announcements.
That's the point.
Yeah.
So in my own opinion, the single most important reform that they have done, and they are doing well, is that on tax and on fiscal policy, because that reforms alone can set Nigeria on a trajectory for another 20, 25 years. And I think that is a very, very good thing to mention.
So, of course, you're talking about the 4 different executive bills from President Tinubu to the NAS. One of them is seeking a change of name for the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Do you support that? For me, anyway, it doesn't.
I mean, name is just name.
For me, name is not just. Let's talk about the other bills, which, of course, will seek to provide a consolidated fiscal tax framework for taxation in Nigeria. So, breaking them down now, do you think that, okay, I think you've actually mentioned it, but how much change, how much of a game changer is it?
Okay, so this is one policy that I am in support of, because if you look at our fiscal tax arrangement, it's too fragmented, just like everything in Nigeria is fragmented. You don't do well with that. Everywhere in the world, there are 3 or 4 main taxes. Income taxes. That's personal income taxes, corporate taxes. Maybe you have VAT, 3, and that's it. So, can we have a situation in which, under this government and future government, things can become predictable, especially at least for businesses? So, whether you are small, whether you are big, whether you are medium-sized business, you know your obligations. You know when those obligations are due, and you know where those obligations should go to. Once we have a predictable tax environment and minimize to the barest minimum, and if possible, eliminate what I call non-state taxes, because that is the problem. The problem we have is non-state taxes. You just have some taxes, some revenue or whatever, but you have no idea where they are going to. Or even if you know where they are going to, you have no idea what they are being used for.
Okay, as we end, because we have about 2 minutes to the end, let's talk a bit about this generating revenue for this administration. Between now, what's your outlook for generating revenue for them? And perhaps with the change of name of FIRS to Nigeria Revenue Service, if that will impact. Then secondly, President Tinubu announcing a reshuffle of his cabinet. Will it change anything? Well, because it will also take the ministers a few months, for those that will be announced to go to another ministry, a few months to learn, it's like 3, 4, 5, 6 months. If you are bringing new people again, will you do an orientation for them like you did the policy retreat? Your time is also going. I'm not saying you should keep them. I'm just saying we're bringing the facts to the table. We're analysts.
Okay, so in terms of revenue, I don't know the details, but I hear things that they are doing on the oil and gas sector. And for me, that is also a great thing that they are doing in that respect, in the sense that it is still the most important way for us to raise revenue. Quick one. I mean, any other thing is long term. But in terms of 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, you're raising revenue, you focus on the oil and gas. And I believe they are doing that, so that is fine. So I agree with that strategy. I don't know anything else they are doing in terms of revenue, but in that one, at least I agree with that. In terms of changing ministers, we go about this changing minister, is because we still personalize so many things in Nigeria. For me, I don't see how changing ministers means so much in Nigeria. So 2 things. One is long-term, one is immediate. The president is the owner of his renewed hope agenda. If he's not working, it's not because of any minister. I don't believe that. If he's not working, it's not because of any minister. So if the minister is not doing what you ask him to do, or the minister is not going aggressively as you would like, then you can change the minister. But your strategy, your direction should not change. Okay. So whether it should not take 3 months or 4 months for any new minister to adjust, if we have a direction. So that's the point I'm trying to make. Okay. So all I need is, does the president have a direction? As long as he has a direction, he can fire and hire whoever.
I think we'll leave it at that for now. We'll continue to watch what's happening. Of course, like they can see on the screen, Nigeria's economic future. But I hope that future is bright and prosperous. Thank you very much,
Thank
Dr.
you so
Okiti.
very much, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I've been speaking with Dr. Ogho Okiti, the Chief Executive Officer at ThinkBusiness Africa. We've been looking at the potpourri of many things concerning the economy. Thank you very much for your company. As always, please join me again same time next week here on this channel. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. Bye now. Thank you for watching. In case this is your first time watching us, thank you. Don't subscribe to the channel, drop your comments as well as like, and most of all, share our content. Bye.